mic really just doesn't want to be anywhere near you.
NT1, I have one of these as well. I have an NT1 at home. Hello. Yeah.
Hello?
All right, I'll just lean in.
Yeah?
Is this just starting?
Oh yeah, this is stop it every time. Every time it's balsa.
Balsa.
Yeah. Would you like to explain yourself?
It's not balsa. It's bolsa.
Oh. I guess you get the sa.
Olsa.
It's basically trying to torture Ryan as much as possible with our plosives.
I like that. I'm going to be extremely expressive today.
Ooh.
Enunciate is the station.
I will slurp my coffee really loud.
That is for.
Please do.
That's for not recording my beautiful joke.
In between when everyone else is talking and not me, I'm just like.
Yeah. That's good.
Whole time.
I do that whenever I stream.
He loves it. Oh yeah, for sure. Why not?
Yeah,
it's the most exciting part.
Okay.
I actually keep all that audio and make ASMR videos.
I'll be yes.
No, this is like you need to pay us money for that. This is like when you take pictures of my feet when I'm doing something else, and then you charge them online.
Everyone's
I like how you look down just in case that you're what
what am I wearing?
Yeah. We are taking pictures of your feet underneath.
Has somebody taken them off? Yeah.
You will be anonymous 2479 in foot fetish things.
These dogs are covered.
It's part of the Patreon.
Oh no. Welcome to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
And I'm Gelb.
And we are joined today by the illustrious Paul Canavan. How you doing, Paul?
And I am Paul.
You are Paul. Thank goodness you're Paul, because neither of us are Paul.
I'm here to be the Paul tonight. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good, no problems at all. I know you from many different amazing things that you do. Artist, animation, artist of very cool game things like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, but also as a creator of RPG, which will be out soon-ish, called Pale Tides. I personally am just very curious about how you started, how your kind of, I guess, your steps into not only the art world itself, but the kind of move from that to working as an artist within games and design, and then the step beyond that of going, I've done the art for lots of other people telling me to do stuff. Now I'm going to do this and create this whole tabletop RPG yourself.
So just the biggest question
basically,
could ever possibly ask. Can you describe
do the whole thing,
your whole life?
So when were you born? And
1986, Chernobyl disaster. Okay, let's break that down. So yes, done a lot of art for sure. That was my main career path for most of my career path, and it still is, I guess. I don't know, I still do that. But yeah, I think getting into art was really just felt like the most logical step when I was at school. I was really into writing. I was already into game design when I was a kid, and music as well. So, but like all of the creative arts, I kind of didn't really have a preference necessarily. Art actually wouldn't have been my preference. I would have done music as a career if I could have, but it's just really hard to make it as a musician, as anyone who's dabbled in the band scene will know. So yeah, I just did art as a career, and somehow it got good. I got to work on lots of cool stuff. I mean, again, this could be like a 40-minute talk just about that, but everyone would die of boredom. So yeah, I studied animation. I hated it. I wasn't very good at it particularly. It was far too mathy for me. You had to do numbers and stuff, and I'm very stupid. So I somehow scraped my way through that and then got into concept art. Worked on lots of small things and then eventually bigger things, as is the way this goes. And then I got to work on lots of cool stuff like Magic the Gatherings and your Warhammers and a lot of video game stuff as well, which was always my kind of main focus because I'm a big video game nerd. And I just wanted to work on all the games. And now I've done it. I've worked on all of them. And I'm sick of it. So I wanted to make my own game. And that's where we end up today, pretty much. That's obviously a very cursory kind of overview, but there's a lot to unpack there, I guess.
No, that as a synopsis, it's pretty succinct. So we've had a few artists on before who have also worked on all of these things, or not all the same ones, but very different things. Sure. Is it as simple as, well, you're doing art, you're doing your things, you're working for some of these smaller projects or things like that. Is it as simple as someone has seen your art and then they want you to do it for a game in particular? Or is there like a step process through, I have been doing art for these things for myself, for TV shows, or for anything else like that? This game thing has come from a different angle and I've had to do that? Or is this just a general, this is the way that the more art you do, the more kind of picked up you are by various people, the more chance there is of this happening?
Do you mean in terms of like, of getting to work on bigger projects or getting to transition into like a different field?
I guess probably getting to work on bigger projects or something at least within the gaming sphere. Mm-hmm. My main thrust of this is for other artists who are wanting to work within games or maybe don't know that they want to work within games yet. Is there like a through line of how that happens or has it just happened for you because you put so much work in?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are a million paths through this industry. No matter what, I don't think anyone really falls into it particularly because there are so many required skills to start getting. Even a junior level job in games requires kind of a big skill set. So like, for example, if someone listening is an artist who wants to work in games or maybe isn't really sure what they want to do necessarily with their skills, there are like 20 paths that they could follow, you know, to get them into that space. For me, I realized that I was obsessed with like the Lord of the Rings, you know, making ofs, any movie making of sort of documentary thing I was obsessed with. And I realized through like watching tons of those and reading books like the Half-Life 2 concept art book and all that kind of stuff, that's where I really learned like concept art is a job, for example. It's like, this is the design job that you do if you want to work in games. You know, maybe you want to paint real good and you might want to become an illustrator and maybe that's a path that you follow. So really it comes down to like kind of picking a path and like working on your skills to the point where those studios actually pay attention to you. And that usually takes a long time and it's a nightmare. You know, I teach a lot of artists and a big part of my job, I think, in that world is really just preparing them for, you know, hey, this is going to take 3 to 5 plus years, you know, from the point where maybe you graduate university to the point where you might actually get picked up to start working on some projects. So in terms of my path, that's kind of where I went. I sort of learned about concept art and then spent, I think it was like 3 years out of animation school just learning the ropes. You know, there's so much is like, what even is design? What skills do I need to do this job, you know, in a studio? And eventually I got picked up freelance for a while, but I didn't get my first in-studio job until 4 years after graduating. That's when I finally got kind of hired by a studio, and it was a tiny studio. It was actually ITV related. It was the branch of ITV who did the Beech Grove Garden, and they had a games division, which is the most insane sentence I can still say. And that's where I got picked up. But yeah, there's a million paths from like, I want to be an artist, I don't know what to do with it, into I'm now working on, you know, AAA video games or whatever. And it usually takes a while.
What's the kind of difference in dynamic of how the sausage is made, I guess, when you're working with smaller outfit versus having to do something like work with an existing IP, which is that, you know, there'll be strict guidelines, but there is a lot of variability there. Mm-hmm. Do you find the addition of lots of constraints empowering or limiting or sometimes both?
I think, weirdly enough, both of those fields have a lot of constraints in the same kind of way. Whether you're working like an indie studio with like 5 people on a video game, there's constraints in that space placed by like the engine you're using. How many artists do you have on the team? A lot of the time it's like 1 or 2. So there are like inherent constraints in that style of art as a job, I guess. And then for Magic the Gathering, there are sort of less and more as well. Working with AAA, you know, big budget productions always feels different to working with an indie team. The stakes are different. You know, if you screw up, you can kind of feel it in a slightly different way. But I mean, in terms of like, do I like working with constraints? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that's one of the most exciting things of being an artist, frankly, is if you're sitting down and someone's like, hey, can you draw me a dragon? And that's it. You know, you can do something and it's fun. But when someone tells you, hey, can you draw a white dragon? It's on a dark background, there's mountains and lightning or whatever's going on. Suddenly you're starting to pick out, you know, the pieces, you're starting to visualize it a lot more. And, you know, if there's additions of constraints, like it has to be in this style. Yeah, I find it more exciting personally, for sure. And Magic kind of, again, they're such different jobs. I think one of the biggest things that people who haven't worked in concept art or illustration maybe realize is that those jobs are completely different. Like concept art is not a painting pretty pictures job, and illustration has elements of concept art, but is completely different. And again, I could talk about this stuff forever, but like it's fascinating to see how, you know, a lot of artists, myself included, when I was younger, were like, okay, I'm going to be a concept artist and illustrator, not realizing that those are like two different portfolios that can kind of touch, but like they are different skill sets, and they appeal to different people as well sometimes.
So I'm curious about like Magic the Gathering, let's say as an example here, of the degree to which some something like that. There's definitely, I'd imagine, style like guides and requirements, but it's not necessarily the same as other IPs just because of the variability there. And it seems like that they're definitely interested in quite a bit of variability. So how does like a brief from someone like that work as opposed to a more narrow or like a more structured, I don't know, IP?
Yeah, it's like super different. Magic is fun because they don't have big requirements for the art style. That's actually the best thing about the IP, I think. Like they don't have a style guide per se in terms of like, you need to paint this way. Like I've worked with League of Legends and stuff like that, where it's got like a very described, like, this is what this game looks like, and all of the art needs to look kind of like this. In that case, in both cases, what you'll probably get is like a world guide or an art direction guide. That's the job of an art director, which is what I've done a lot in my career. It's my favorite part of art, to be honest. Which is basically overseeing the look of something and working with the artists to make sure that they get the look that you're looking for. Those two like angles are super different. So again, if you're working on like a League of Legends, we would be giving the artists, or the art directors, whoever, would be giving the artists, you know, these are the kind of shapes that you see in this world. These are, when you render, as in like when you paint and fill in, I don't know how to describe rendering, make something look three-dimensional. Yeah. You know, it needs to look kind of like one of these splash screens. So here are some examples. Whereas Magic the Gathering's version would be, these are the shapes you might find in this plane. Like, let's say you're working on Ravnica. It's like, here are some examples. You know, it's Prague, but on steroids. And here are some images of like buildings from Prague. Here's Coruscant from Star Wars. So you can understand that like this whole place is like a big city, basically. It's real big. And the constraints wouldn't be on the actual art style itself. They're not going to tell you how to render, but they're going to give you those like touchstones. Like, here are the shapes that the Boros Legion use. So like if you're going to paint Aurelia, the war leader, or something like that, try and include some of these shapes in it. But they don't tell you how to paint, which is quite freeing. And that's why, you know, Magic has such a kind of diverse art style, you know, which I think is its greatest strength.
Hugely. So moving from that into your own work, then you're saying how great restrictions are for helping you visualize something and create something from the thing. Moving from that into your current RPG, Pale Tides, those restrictions, I imagine, come directly from yourself. Hopefully?
Yes.
Or is it much more?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, is that something you put down and you give yourself these restrictions? Or is it something of, well, I've got free reign. I'm just going to do this exact thing that popped into my head while I was doing this that is perfect?
It's a little bit both. When it's your own project, yes, you do need to still apply. You need to go through the world building process and the art direction process in the same way. I think that's I assume there are some RPGs out there that haven't gone through that process. Maybe they don't have an art director. I think one of the strengths that my project has, I guess, is just that I get to do that for the thing. Whether it is good or not in the end, we'll find out next year, I guess. But yeah, it does need constraints. And like for me, a lot of those are things like most of the art is going to be traditional. So lots of heavy oil painting. That's one of the kind of big ones. It's going to be very expressive and loose. Nothing's going to be super rendered because it's my project. And I don't actually like a lot of the stuff I do for Magic the Gathering or like Warhammer or whatever has been mega rendered, like super detailed and stuff like that. Whereas for Pale Tides, it's a horror game. And I think horror is always at its best when it's impressionistic, when you don't actually see every detail on the monster. I actually think that's like, you know, I could talk for hours about other role-playing games. Yeah, I love role-playing games, but there's a lot of them where it's, you know, any Lovecraft story where they're like, here's the scariest thing you've ever seen. You can't even imagine what it looks like. Also, here's a drawing of it. This is like, no, that immediately destroys the illusion for me. So like for Pale Tides, a lot of that stuff is, okay, if we ever represent the really scary stuff, the monsters, the entities, the pale things, all these kind of elements of the game, you never see them fully. And that includes the keeper, which is basically the GM in my game. So like even the GM doesn't know exactly what these things look like. So they have a lot of scope to like describe more the feeling it invokes. So yeah, constraints I think are always going to be good. And even in my own stupid game, I try and do the same job, you know.
It's very exciting. I looked a lot into Pale Tides because it's awesome. Where did that step come from, I guess? Because Illustrator, yes, artists and all the other bits and pieces, someone who loves video games for sure, you enjoy role-playing games. Where is that point where it's like, you know what? I'm doing this out of my own thing and I want it to be this. What's the I guess as much as anything, the impetus, but also the thing that you maybe saw that's already within role-playing games and you're like, no, I want this instead, that you felt you had to create?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the real impetus for it came from me running a horror game like about 16 years ago or something. Like I ran a game of Cypher, actually. I think it was Numenera, but I twisted it and it was basically the rules of Cypher. But I ran a horror game using Cypher because I thought it was a cool system. And I found myself, as anyone does when they GM a game, I was tweaking so many rules and like trying to turn it into this thing that I thought it should be to scare the crap out of my players, basically. I was like, I'm never going to describe things in this way necessarily. I'm going to pace things a certain way. As the GM, I'm going to take a lot of creative control in how the story goes and try and like craft a horror story rather than letting it be completely freeform. And the players loved it. I loved it. I had such a great time with it. And I think I'd just been kind of chasing that ever since. Like every other game I ever ran, I was like, no, I think this is good. And it's so much hubris. There's like, I think when you've worked in games for a long time, you just, everyone who works in games has ideas about how games should work, right? You know, and whether they're right or not, you know, there's a bit of both. But I definitely got to a point where, one, I was just kind of sick of working for other people. You know, I've worked 16 or 17 years almost in the games industry. I've worked for basically everyone at this point, and it's great and I love my career, but eventually you get kind of tired of like sending in a painting and then getting a bunch of feedback that completely changes it. And I was like, no, I want to do my own thing. I remember doing this role-playing game. I've always wanted to tell my own kind of stories, and that's kind of it, really. It's not, you know, it wasn't a hugely planned out thing. It just kind of happened, you know.
So speaking of that, what is the story of Pale Tides?
So it is a game where you play as witches fighting back against the church. So basically the idea is taking the kind of the classic concept of the witch hunts, where, you know, tons and tons of people were burned, drowned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very rich part of our history in Scotland as well. And flipping it on its head. You know, it's a story about fighting back against power. It's a story about the way people use religion as a weapon and all this stuff. There's a lot of heavy themes in the game, but all within that is wrapped up in like a horror world. So it's a sort of 17th century alternative history kind of thing. And yeah, I just wanted to make a kind of empowering thing where you just play as a bunch of cool witches who have to get the balance right. There's a lot of inspiration from video games in there. You know, there's a bit of Dishonored, there's Bloodborne, there's all sorts of stuff in there. But the real idea was like, how do we create a cool, scary role-playing game that like riffs off a lot of the stuff I've talked about already, which is like the idea of creating something really scary, but also being really empowering as well, which is like a really fun balance. And then the actual spooky stuff is drawn mostly from like Scottish, Irish folklore at this stage. There's actually more. There's so much, but for the initial release, it's mostly a lot of Scottish stuff in there as well. So it's got kind of a unique flavor.
Yeah, I'm really interested when it comes to, I mean, horror-themed tabletop RPGs have been around. It's a thing, but it's also quite a hard thing to do because you either have something that is mechanically horror focused, but quite throwaway because of that. It's your one shot dread, it's your 10 candles, it's something like that feels very horror-y, but that's it, and it's over. Or you have something that has a horror kind of background to it, I guess, like a Call of Cthulhu or something like that, where the world is ostensibly horror monsters-y, that themed, but your players are almost empowered by what they do and then I've leveled up and it's got things. And that often can have some issues when it comes to humor as well within people playing role-playing games. I often find no matter what I do in a role-playing game, it will always devolve into some sort of silly jokes and other things like that. How have you found those challenges with trying to build a horror game?
I think that is very much a thing. And like players are always going to kind of get silly around the table. You can never really predict what players are going to do, you know. And like some of that I think is inevitable. Even though the way I've structured it is that it's quite po-faced. Like it treats itself quite seriously, which isn't my normal approach, really. Like I'm much more a fan of writing kind of comedy style stuff. So it was actually kind of hard not to do something like my friend's game Teeth, which is like this kind of wonderful, silly, you know, beautifully silly horror game. You know, that's very much where like my heart wants to take this.
Says the guy with a raven on his hand.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I got a few witchy tattoos in here. But yeah, like I naturally move towards that stuff. But I actually think for me, horror and comedy do share a really interesting space where like laughing to get rid of the stress is like something that I'm more interested in rather than telling jokes, rather than making like a dark Discworld story or something like that. Pale Tides basically acts very po-faced and very like it's not sarcastic really. It's like the concepts you're dealing with are all big and scary. And the idea is more that I want players to kind of have moments of levity between those where they can laugh about it and like,
as intermission rather than as the point.
Exactly, yeah. And there's lots of ways, like it's also quite a mechanical game, which is weird. I'm trying really hard to stop it being crunchy. I don't think it's a crunchy game necessarily, but it has a lot of, for example, has lots of tables for the GM to like quickly create results on the fly that could be funny. Like, for example, there are situations, I haven't seen this happen yet in testing, but there are situations where it's like you just roll a d6 and like generate a quick result for if you fail a combat encounter, and it's like you drop your weapon. If that keeps happening, that creates like a humorous moment within a scary fight. And I love that kind of stuff, that like that sense of players scrabbling around and like it has a very dynamic system. So like in theory, again, the big playtest is coming out at the end of this month. So we'll find out a bunch more stuff when that comes out. But that's the kind of idea for me, is like not to rely on humor necessarily, but to allow it to happen within the gaps. Because the one of my big kind of inspirations for the game was trying to find a way to create like a Ouija board-esque experience. And I definitely I don't think I've hit that necessarily, but that idea of like, let's get together around a table, kind of the 10 candles thing, you know, it's like, we'll light some candles. The game itself is it's quite ritualistic, the way it uses the tarot and stuff like that. And so like people are going to giggle, people are going to like be on edge during this. And that's exactly the kind of look I'm going for, or that feeling that I'm going for with this. It doesn't need to be like terrifying necessarily, but enough that people are like a little bit nervous and that the game feels like it's reacting to you, which is something I'm really interested in. Like a quick example, like the keeper, which is again the GM. You always have to have it's like names for zombies in movies. You always have to have a stupid name for GM.
They've run through so many of them now. I think like the next zombies, yeah, right. The next ones are just going to be smiling. The grinners. They're coming for it's so your keeper.
Yes, the keeper has like a lot of tools to basically mess with the players. And like the game has a system currently called notoriety. I might change that to something scarier, like dread or something like that. But notoriety basically is like a counter that ticks up whenever the players do something really stupid. So it instantly gets rid of that. You're in a pub. There's a barmaid there, and one player goes, I'm going to hit the barmaid. And it's like, okay, go for it. You've just gained 2 notoriety, 3 notoriety. And that's like a resource they can spend to do horrible stuff to the party, whether it's summoning witch hunters, things like that. So you can allow players to do the stupid stuff, but then punish them for it, which is something I personally find very funny.
It's the classic GM thing of someone says, can I do this? You never say no. You say yes, and then you give consequences.
Yes.
Like the consequences are the fun part.
Yeah.
You're never trying to work against the players.
Yes, exactly.
They're working against themselves, and you're kind of teaching them the rules of the world by the consequences that you give them.
That's exactly it.
Always been really interesting, which sounds really cool. Pale Tides is something you have been working on for a few years now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been burrowing away in the back of my mind for about 10 years, probably, maybe longer. I actually have kind of lost track of when again, development for something like this is very much in the background. And then at some point it becomes like the foreground. And for me, it kind of came to the foreground in the last like 2 or 3 years where I realized that like this was the time to do it.
It's it's going to be quite, or from what I've seen, it's going to be a decent size book as well.
Yeah.
You saying that you got like deep into it in the past 2 or 3 years into doing it. That's a lot of time and a lot of effort that you've put into this. Have you found that because this is a passion project, this is something that you're really into, that this hasn't had any problems with you putting that time in for it compared to what you would usually, I guess, spend working on freelance projects and things with other people? Is that something you've had to factor in to when you're taking a freelance job or when you're taking a job from a company to go, no, wait, I need a week to work on Pale Tides and I'm going to kind of push this through because I've done this Kickstarter and I need to get it done?
Fight for attention.
Yeah. I mean, I plan my projects around it, basically. Because the Kickstarter did quite well. I think we made like 53K or something like that, which is amazing. A huge portion of that is going towards the book itself. I think it's like 40K of that is going towards the production of the book. Because basically I'm trying to make the most like premium thing ever. My big goal for this was not to release an indie RPG, even though it's an indie RPG. You know, really pushing the quality of the book, and also like the marketing and all that kind of stuff will be a big push. So I've still had to take on work for sure. Like I'm still working on Magic the Gathering right now. I still work on some film stuff here and there, and I also teach. So that's part of the reason for me taking a long time with it, to be honest. I actually just didn't want to rush with it. It's kind of interesting. It's like I'm breaking a couple of the cardinal rules of game design here, where it's like your first project, you know, don't make it the biggest thing in your life, you know, don't make it your dream project. And it's like, well, I'm going to do that. It's I must do that. And then also, it can be a little all consuming, but I don't know. For me, it's my brain is broken. So working on my game is like a break from working on the other games. You know, I get off working on. I finished working on some paintings for some project, and then I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can do some bloody writing finally. Because like that's the other thing. Like for me, the writing,
quite a release.
Yeah, exactly. Huge release. Gosh, yeah, absolutely. Really takes me to the edge with that one. But like
There's 2 of you I've been ganged up against. Hey!
I joined in about it. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, fine.
But yeah, basically like getting a chance to work on my game for a bit is like a glorious release from working for my horrible captors at Wizards of the Coast,
and
who I love very much. Thank you so much for hiring me.
And as this is such a passion thing, and it is being done in your spare time, or your not spare time because it's Pale Tide time, which it should be a cocktail.
That's
if
the
it's
campaign.
not already. Are people in your life sick of hearing you talk about it yet?
So surprisingly not, although they might be lying for sure. I don't know. I keep a lot of this stuff to myself, and even with like the updates on Kickstarter, I do like an update every month for my backers, and I just try not to give too much away. So luckily, not that many people have had to put up. Like my partner hears me blather about like, I just came up with this new mechanic for this, and she's like, I literally couldn't care less. That's what she's saying in her brain, but she's like, tell me about it. I would love to hear about how you can draw a card to dispel whatever it is, you know. But no, I've mostly been lucky to have a very supportive friend group. You know, all my friends are game designers or artists anyway, right? So like they either they want to see that art or they want to hear about what D6s can do or whatever.
And is that helpful, or is that like, if you weren't game designers, you wouldn't be trying to fix something that I've just told you about that's an interesting idea? Or is that fantastic that you have so many people's input into a game that you were making?
I love that stuff, honestly. Like it's the same with art. Like there's always going to be debates about like how valuable critique is in art, etc. But I think everything is valuable. So
does feedback hit different when you are, both the artist and the art director? In terms of someone, digging into your output versus your soul?
I think yes. So far most of my testing has been like relatively internal with like friends, people I know quite well. So they've always been very thoughtful. As soon as this like external playtest goes out, I'm absolutely going to get a load of like, this is crap. Like you shouldn't. Why are you doing this? Why is this not running the Blades in the Dark system or whatever? And I will probably cry. Yes, even though I'm like fairly tough when it comes to online stuff. Yeah, it's definitely going to hit. But again, whatever, you need that to push it forwards, Testing is the biggest part of game design, and I've got about 6 months of it ahead, basically, of like hardcore testing to get it through the finish line.
And why isn't it using the Blades in the Dark system?
That's a great question.
Well, thanks. Sorry. It's not that.
I think the flashback system sucks.
Hot takes.
He said it.
Sorry.
You heard it here.
Sorry. I talked about this on a podcast recently. I think it's bad. It's not bad. It's cool. It's very cool. It's very good design, but I think it's kind of bullshit.
It can fracture. It can
very
fracture
cool.
a story
Great.
a little. And it can cut a flow a little bit. I do understand that. I think it's valid for the system it's using, and I think that's it. Right? It's
perfect.
having a mechanic or a mechanical system that works within the theme and the story that you're trying to tell is probably the most important thing when it comes to RPG things. Which is why Pale Tides isn't just a 5e hack.
Exactly.
It's doing its own thing.
Not a lot of artists that certainly that I know, especially relatively early career artists, seem to have the confidence of saying, "Oh, I'm going to go make my own game." And the fact that your background includes very, whether it's concept art, illustration, and art direction, do you think that you kind of need that in order to have gone through the gauntlet, or have you always kind of been a little bit more, confident in not only your abilities of the actual art itself, but in designing what good looks like for you to work towards as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I guess to answer it like from my own perspective, I don't know what I'm saying.
Someone else's.
I'm to answer that from someone else's
perspective.
from a completely different person's perspective. No,
Lots of teeth.
for me, it feels like the culmination of my entire career, which sounds very wanky, but it's kind of true. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Even 5 years ago, I don't think I would have had the confidence to do this.
Why?
Because I didn't have experience, I guess, working through the entire process of game design. Like when you're an artist starting out and maybe you're working on like a small project, you touch the project, but you don't like see it all the way through. I think now that I've worked on games from start to finish, so I have a sense of the scope. I have a lot of friends who are producers, and I feel their pain. And I've learned, what game production looks like and how to actually bring a thing from start to finish. That stuff really helped me just understand that whole process. And then leading teams, I think once I started art directing for bigger projects, when I was at Axis, losing my voice here. So emotional.
So emotional.
Just thinking
Well,
about
actually, Axis, unfortunately,
Yeah,
Understand
Rip Artist,
God.
Rip Axis, a great studio. But yeah, then you're leading, a team of 200 artists or whatever to make projects for Destiny or League of Legends or whatever. I think it's like we working on all that stuff and seeing various projects from start to finish, and also just seeing how much people screw that process up as well. That combination of things, I think, is what gave me the confidence to be like, I'll give it a shot. I don't have really the kind of built-in confidence to be like, this is going to be a huge success. I've never really viewed Pale Tides that way. But my thought process behind it has always been, well, I've spent, my whole career working on stuff that was like scary and hard that I didn't really know how to do. And I always managed to kind of get through it one way or another in the end. So what if I just like bite off a huge thing here, spend all my money so I have to make it like somewhat successful, and just give it a shot, Mm-hmm. And that really was like it wasn't much more thought through than that. When I decided to do the Kickstarter, for example, that was like literally, you know what, I'll just do this thing. Screw it. I'm never, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it. So,
but there is a lot of experience required in order to get to that point of being able to say, you know what, let me just do it and screw it. Because there's all this deprogramming that you feel like you have to go through just through the experience of it all.
Yeah, and also like the reality is like any old artist absolutely could make their own role playing game, and they might do great with it. I've been in this industry long enough that I do have like benefits, I guess, from that. Like I have a lot of friends in the industry who can help me. I'm very lucky. Like my buddy Chris was like editor of PC Gamer and all this stuff, and like he's like, I'll just edit your book, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. There are definitely like things that come from having worked in the industry for a long time that give you an advantage maybe over me 10 years ago when I would have put this out on Drive-Thru-RPG and like 4 people would have got it and been like, it's fine. And the reality is like 400 people might get this and be like, it's fine. But it's been it's maybe easier or something with that.
So you teach artists as well. And so I guess maybe we talked about it a little bit at the very, very beginning about, artists that are just starting out. But are there specific things that you advise artists that are just getting going, especially about building that resilience or building that ability to, whether it's roll with the punches or whatever, in order to push on to the next thing or to take on a larger project and build that confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like make a lot of art. Like there's this kind of funny thing with art education where I think a lot of the stuff you get taught, and I talk about this a lot when I stream or when I teach, a lot of the stuff you get taught at school or by professionals on YouTube or whatever, a lot of it's a nonsense, really. Like the reality is all you need to do to get better at art is just keep making art and to try and absorb as much as you can from the world around you. So really it's a case of like giving people like a little bit of a path to follow so that they just find themselves making more and more art. It's like, hey, try this out, try painting, try sculpting, try drawing or whatever. The resilience, I think, just comes with time. Like, I don't think there's necessarily a way to, at some point as an artist, someone's going to say, hey, I don't like the thing you made. And how you deal with that is going to change as you mature, really. Like, I think everyone who's aged like 17 to 25, is going to get, really butthurt by feedback, as I did, back when I was a kid getting into art as well. So yeah, I don't know, just keep making art. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Developing resilience has a million meanings, even down to like, how do you develop resilience to post your work online? Because that's a whole thing. And I think it just comes from, what's helpful is just doing it. And also like trying to surround yourself with like-minded people, other artists who are going through the same process, finding, Discord servers, with friendly folk, going on Blue Sky, making friends, all that kind of stuff. That stuff really helps, because the reality is you're going to get horrible feedback from people. People are going to be mean to you online. I've had more than my fair share of all of these things, and who cares? Eventually, over time, you learn not to care that much about them.
Yeah. So with Pale Tides being such an in-depth part of your life at the moment, do you feel like when Pale Tides is out there, it's all out there in the ether, it's all done, you'll be like, I cannot wait to work for a big company again? Or is there already something brewing in there for a future project of going, once Pale Tides is done, I've started something, I've lit a fire, I need to keep going?
Oh, there's
slightly
so much
tides.
More. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, warm tides. No, there are. I'm never going to do art direction for a big company again. Like this is my career now. What?
You heard it here.
Yeah, exactly. And never again.
Breaking news.
Don't hire me for anything. But no. I mean, yeah. Pale Tides is kind of the beginning, because like the idea for the first game is that it sets up and establishes a lot of stuff. But I already have plans for expansions. I already have plans for sequels. And I have 2 other role-playing games that I'm working on in the back of my head as well, just because I have ADHD and I must at all times be working on 1,000 things. So no, this is very much I'm not going to say it's like a proving ground, because like I need it to be good. It's so important to me that the game is as good as it can be when it releases, and it can serve as like a foundation for all the future stuff. Like the system I'm building for Pale Tides, the Tide system, how did you come up with that? Is something I plan to use for future games. And I have a bunch of plans for that. So
that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to join us, Paul. It has been a true joy. And if people are interested in Pale Tides or your other work or anything else that you do, where would be the best place to find you online or in real life. Don't give your address away.
I will not. I don't need the Gamergators finding me. You can, I just Google, Google Pale Tides. It's on Kickstarter, bit.ly/Pale Tides, or just go to paulscottcanavan.com. That is my website. But again, I'm all over the bloody internet, so just search for my name and you'll find me somewhere. But yeah, thank you for having me. This has been such a pleasure.
No worries. Thank you for listening to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I am Gelb.
And this has been recorded and edited by Ryan Scott. If you liked this, or didn't...
Even if you didn't,
please let us know in the comments or via email or Pigeon, if you've got Pigeon.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like us, drop us a line. And if you don't, do this really, really cool thing where you press follow or like. It actually works against us. So we'll still get the message.
Thank you very much for coming and listening with us. And we'll hear you next time.